So the first thing that I learned was that it isn't about just marketing, and that's why I just cannot get behind just calling it ABM. I do, right, just so I can get that trigger and we can make that connection. But at the end of the day, it's about everyone. Anybody who touches a customer. And that's why I sort of mentioned that CX thing in the start, because I think these things are intertwining. You know, life was actually, as hard as it was to get it up and running, life is a little bit more simple in an MQL-centric point of view, right? Where you're just, hey, we're going to get leads, and we're going to dump them in, and it enters the funnel, and you guys you're the machinery that takes it on the other side, right? But now we're thinking in an account-based world, in a CX world, things have changed. So the first thing you got to think about is that we aren't just siloed in marketing. We care about everyone who touches a customer. And in order to do that, once again, power couple tribute there, we have to be able to be thinking outside the box, and technology is the only way that we can loop all these things together. So the idea here is across all of those different silos and all those different touches, we're trying to drive engagement and conversion at a set of target accounts. So there's 5 things that we think are the key traits of an account-based program. So number 1 is a targeted high-value set of accounts. I'm going to talk about this in a sec, because this part gets tricky, right? Because you're either going too far with it, and it's preventing you from getting started, or you're going too little with it, and you're making bad decisions. But I'll talk to you about that in a moment. But it's pretty simple. If you're going to be account-based, it's because you believe that there's a set of accounts that are better, more likely to close, driving the highest ACV, right? That's why you do account-based. Frankly, I work with people all the time, and you can't make that decision. Who cares? Then don't. Right? But the first thing we got to decide is that we want to get after a certain set of targets, and that's really interesting. The second one is intelligence-based. So when we want to just go big, then we can just try to find topics and ideas that try to get as many people, let's say, to a webinar. We can all get 400 people to a webinar. Right, if we're selling to marketing, it's 25 things to do in your ABM program. We'll get 350 people to sign up, right, and X amount to show up. But if we want those specific companies, we have to make an intelligent decision on what's most likely to resonate with them, whether it's a specific company or a set of companies. Orchestration, theme of today, we don't have to go too big on that. Valuable and personalized, you know, I keep mixing all these ideas, power couple, CX, account-based, but you know, we talked about this for a long time. I mean, if you go do like a Google search of the blogosphere from 10 years ago, everyone was talking about, oh, the buyer, the buyer, the buyer, but frankly, we didn't really do it because we could hit our lead numbers by, again, going as big and wide as possible. Now we're trying to go narrow. And so when we do that, conversion is a requirement. It's a must-win situation, so we have to figure out what's most valuable and personalized to deliver to that buyer. And then obviously a coordinated effort in high-frequency outreach over time. This sounds like a small idea, but it's a big one, right? Because when you're going wide, something doesn't work out, they didn't sign up for a webinar, they didn't come to an event, you throw them in the garbage, you keep going. That's not account-based. We keep going on that account, right? And so, you know, when we think about these things, we're trying to set up orchestration, we want to think about it over time. So something's not working for 2 months and it's a big company, it might work in 6. So we believe a new funnel has emerged, and I just want to walk you through it and give you some ideas here. So I'm just, you know, if you look on the far left, the most important thing is to start with an ideal customer profile. So I talked about this, we were talking about a targeted high value set of accounts. So let me just tell you some of the things that I'm seeing happening out there in the form of a story. So the number one thing I believe to be successful, the first step to being successful in account-based, is that sales says, if you get me into this account, I got it. If you don't get that, you're dead. I'm telling you. It doesn't matter what the predictive machine said. It doesn't matter any of that. Unless it's sales says, if you get me in there, I got it. I was just meeting with this CMO, and she is just awesome. Okay, one of the top 5. Don't worry, Megan, you're still number 1. She's in the top 5, maybe top 3. Okay. She just went to a new, oh, Tamir, hey, man, I didn't see you there. Tamir, you're 2. That's what I meant. I wanted to tell you. Anybody else I know in here? All right, no, we're good. All right, so, But she walked in, she was an account base, she'd been doing account base for 3 years, and it was clear that they needed account base. And she just, like, rocked change management. Her first speech was in front of sales, and it was, I'm moving you guys to account base. The case was clear, it was, and she just got everyone excited, and she moved everyone away. I'll just give you a reference point. If there was an A, B, C, and D account, they were living off C's and D's and couldn't grow, low ACV, high churn. And she said, I'm focusing everything on these ABs. All right? But here was the problem a year later, is that sales wasn't in on that. The team running sales was still about BANT, fast sales cycle, low-level IT sales. They never got that agreement. And now a year later, all the change happened and all the good numbers are coming in. The pipeline has been reshaped. All big companies, they take longer and they're harder to sell. And guess what? The C's and D's, much lower. And so now a year later, because we didn't get that agreement, they're getting stuff like the stories on the ABs. Well, you got a meeting with 35 people from the IT department at FedEx, but there's no project, so could you just send me whatever you got so I can hit my number? Right? And they're like, and now our SMB business is dried up. And so now I'm just sitting there going, oh my gosh, like, we just made this crazy change and we didn't get that agreement where sales said, if you get that meeting with 35 people from FedEx, we're good to go. And unfortunately, that agreement didn't come down. And I see this more and more, which is we got to get the ICP, and it's got to be that simple agreement. It's qualitative, right? I'm not dropping in any data here or anything scientific. It's pretty simple. Another example is how people get, like, they run like marketing is so sophisticated. You guys can run a list using data and predictive to figure out who the best people are to sell to. But I'll tell you what, you don't go in and go, here's who we should sell to. The trick is what I call the leave it on the desk play, which is you go into the VP of sales, say, hey, I know you got to come up with a target list and ICP. Here's some data we came up with. Just let us know in a week. So that they come back and say, hey, I have this great idea. Let's make this the target list. That's how this kind of stuff works. And I'm telling you right now, this account-based stuff does not work without the VP just giving you that thing that says, just get us into these accounts and we got it. All right? Second thing you notice, we pulled the lead out here because, depending on your model, we need to encourage really great marketing behavior, trackable marketing behavior, okay, that drives us to meetings and opportunity pipeline at the end. The problem with a very rigid sort of waterfall perspective means that everything we do has to pigeonhole things to get credit in the boardroom for a lead. That's not right. For example, a CEO, a CMO, et cetera, they are not going to go to your webinar on the 1,000 reasons you have the dirtiest data center in the world, or whatever you want to call it. So what are the actions that we'd like them to take, trackable actions? I'm running into more and more companies that are account-based, and SDRs are triggering just off web activity, because these are target accounts. You guys know the drill. You do a campaign to 100 accounts, and you get 5 leads. Yeah, but 20 of them may have hit the website, done some activity there, and that's triggering sales development activity. And that's the kind of stuff we have to focus on to be account-based, right? We still want to have a level of engagement that we drive that triggers things, but we want to be focused less on just getting that singular thing and handing it off and to move on, to keep going. The second reason the lead's gone is because we believe that we want to be driving engagement over time. We believe that's trackable in what we call the account engagement score. You're starting to see this pop up more and more, which is we want marketing, right, as everyone's a marketer in the room, to be thinking about engagement over the long course of time. I'll give you some examples when we talk about that in a second, unless I run out of time. The other thing, too, is just target account pipeline, which is a very simple metric. It's not good for you right now if you're just transitioning an account base. For most companies, it's just standard volume and velocity programs. If you look at your pipeline, your target account pipeline is probably about 15, 20%. And if we're going to decide that these are the right people to go for, this is a very simple metric to track how are we doing against the ICP or our target accounts. So, as we're in the power couple room, this is not, whenever I say, okay, target account pipeline, the ops people are like, okay, Craig, what's the calculation for that? I'm like, Yeah, it's target account pipeline. That's what you track. No, there's going to be an algorithm. No. Just track target account pipeline. We're good. It's a simple thing, but it's a great. In the near term, especially as you roll out account base, can you move the target account pipeline number? Because I'm telling you, for most of you, it's like 15, 20% or worse, right? And if we believe if sales says get me into those accounts and we're tracking that and showing progress against that, then that's our early win. And frankly, if that's our best accounts and we've made the right decisions on who should go in the pipeline, then frankly, that target account pipeline is the most valuable. And then the final thing is account-based is about LTV. And for all of us in the SaaS world, the boards are on us, net new, acquisition, especially with monthly inside sales quotas, right? MRR, what's the net new MRR? But the reality is for account-based, we are making decisions on companies that will have the highest LTV for us. And oftentimes, similar to, I gave you that idea where we said, okay, well, marketing said, here's a lead, good luck. We're doing the same thing on net new to expansion. It's either an ad hoc play from smart salespeople, or we have very young account managers and CS folks, and they're just kind of building their own processes. Instead of thinking about, well, if this company is worth, the potential account revenue there is worth $2 million, and our first deal is going to be $30,000, from a planning perspective, power couple operations perspective, I'm pandering now, is how do we drive them to the point where we get the maximum amount of revenue out of those accounts? So that's how we've been thinking about account base, and certainly, there are early hiccups on the way, and I'll just mention one. So I gave you the example of my top 5. I got there's 2 people ahead of them in the room, unless there's more. And Rob, sorry, number 3, you're good. She didn't get that agreement that sales wanted those accounts. The other thing she did is she just right-turned the Titanic. That's a bad call. I tell people all the time, if you have the volume and velocity machine working and it's delivering, keep it. And just recast this as better outbound, enterprise marketing. I don't care. But the problem is the organization's not ready for you to right-turn the Titanic unless you've been running volume and velocity and you have a 50 account list, right? You got to keep things. That adds complexity. You got 2 different funnels. You have 2 different sets of metrics, but it's the right thing to do. And frankly, it's the right thing to do to look at a year later, right? You're just looking at growing a certain segment as your first step in account base. The right turn has to be because we've absolutely determined that we can't deal with anybody but in the ICP. But for most of you, you've built some volume and velocity lead generation program, keep it. And even if you don't want, the other thing I learned with that CMO is she's going to go back and say, we're not calling it account-based. She's going to rebrand it. Just because, it set this crazy expectation. And she's saying, we're just going to, I forget what she wants to call it. It's just enterprise class demand generation or something like that. Right? Just because, she wants to say, look, I'm going back, I'm going to keep this machine, and now I'm going to grow the enterprise revenue. All right? So let's just talk about, so one of the big things I've learned is when we talk about the ICP, that in account-based, your target account list is your target market. So that's different because the TAM has always been a numerical calculation. It's tried to be as wide as possible. When we're talking about account-based, we're going to figure out who the ICP is, then we're going to develop this target account list. That becomes your TAM, so to speak. Right? That's strategic. It's funny because when the team's always like, you got to talk about lists, you got to talk about data. I'm like, no, that's not my thing. But it's strategic now. That target account list, that ICP is strategic. And then data becomes strategic because your data is terrible. I don't know 90% of you in the room, but I already know your data is terrible. And it's because data is terrible. Even at the best companies, the most rock solid, I'm sure the ZenIQ guys can tell you, go in everywhere, they got everything going, it's like, whoa, right? Because we got all these inputs. It's my favorite thing is I go in, it's like, okay, marketing's got their database, sales development's just uploading contents like crazy from Discover.org. Sales, I'm not sure, there's 50%, their business cards are lying on the desk or in the in your CRM, your Salesforce, et cetera. And it's just a mess in there, and there's no cohesion. But when you are going after a certain set of accounts, our data becomes strategic. We have to be able to say, if this is our ICP, this is our target account list, we're going to tier them and figure out our prioritization, which I'll talk about in a sec. Now this has to be organized and fulfilled in such a way that we know exactly who it is we need to go after in each account. So remember, in marketing's point of view before, right, we could just email. I mean, we just go big. Now we're saying, well, you have X amount of accounts. This is a target account list. Data becomes important because marketing wants to know who those key personas are and what's happened there. And they want to run plays off what's happened in sales and sales development, et cetera. And without a database that's sensible, somewhat clean, I know it's a holy grail, but we're going to get there, it's actually now a strategic thing that you have to turn to your operations team to go do. And then, finally, what people are doing to select accounts and put them into execution. There's been some creative things happening today. Some will just pull verticals and make it a campaign-centric select. Others are using data and activity, right? So you have the set of target accounts. These guys are maybe, capturing activity from like the greater internet or internal, on your internal website, whatever that might be. People are using data to pull a select group of accounts out to go run full-fledged committed programs there. So this, like I said, I don't love talking about data, but now I do because it's the most important thing you can do, and it's a breaking point for most of your programs. The other thing you want to do is you want to tier your accounts so you can make good decisions on what your resources do. Now, normally we show the pyramid. I just wanted to show the rigor that you want to apply to that. That's complexity too, because you're going to run different programs and different things against your A's, B's, C's, D's, E's, whatever. And you want to go align this and figure out what's marketing going to do, SDR, sales, et cetera, CS, and figure out who's who, what's what kind of programs. Like most people on their AA enterprise accounts are running high custom types of programs, and their B's and C's, it's more of a mashup of volume and velocity, and that's complexity, but it's the right thing to go do. So orchestration is why we're here. So if you, I pared this thing down because frankly, this just shows like one thread, but there's a lot of things that come along with orchestration. There's lots of touches across our organizations. There's multi-threads. Right? So we're going to do different programs against CEOs versus VPs versus directors, managers, et cetera. And we got to map that. We got to care about it. And then we're going to need our power couple to go figure out how we manage and track that. The other thing, too, is there are new plays and touches happening. We're seeing more and more marketing plays happening in the sales cycle. So I talked to a company where the minute an opportunity is created, marketing plays take place. Account-based advertising, advertising to the executive suite, like sending them direct mail, et cetera. All the things we do on the front end are being triggered by opportunity creation on the back end. SDR and marketing collaboration is the fastest path to orchestration. So I just want to say, because this looks great, it's really hard, and sales is a pain in the ass to work with. So how do we get started? We can get started with sales development. We can start with simple plays in sales, but you got to start simple. And a lot of the companies that have been successful, they go to the sales development team and say, let's go create a multi-channel, multi-threaded orchestration plan together, and they do it, and they get up and running quickly, and they're feeding the tap right away. So the other thing I talked about is the score. So we want to be able to score things over time, and we want to watch kind of what happens, and we want to continue to work together to continue to drive engagement over time. Everyone's going to define engagement differently. For a lot of new programs in the enterprise, engagement literally means they did one thing, right? For many of you, that might, a mature ERP company might have different views of what engagement might look like. But instead of, a lot of the core lead scoring elements are still in place, but we want to start to take in what's happening in terms of two-way conversations, two-way engagement through sales, sales development, CS, et cetera. We want to start to score those things and be looking at them over time. So like, for example, you can see here just a simple example of opportunity management on the sales side. Sales is using applications today to watch whether engagement is continuing to be at a high level in their sales opportunities, and they're using that to forecast, right? Now, they don't know marketing can help, sales development can help. If we could all just sync on all that engagement score and make good decisions over time. So what you want to do is you want to think about all your touches, just like your lead scoring models, right? Except we got to extend that, and we got to start looking at everything. So I was talking about marketing SDR collaboration. A lot of time, marketing and SDR data is really good to just start with your AES score, because they're doing cool things like having phone conversations, social conversations, replies, etc. And that's me.